In the quiet town of Willow Creek, the Carter family was once the pride of the community. Richard Carter, a man known for his honor and relentless hard work, had built the family business from the ground up, Carter and Sons Construction. His dream was simple yet profound, to leave a lasting legacy for his daughter, Emily, and to provide a secure and loving future for his wife, Sarah. Every morning, long before the sun rose, Richard was already at the construction sites, inspecting every detail, making sure his workers were treated fairly and the projects were running smoothly. Sarah managed their home with grace, always supporting Richard's vision. Little Emily, still a child then, often accompanied her father to the office, absorbing lessons about honesty, resilience, and the value of hard work. But life has a way of testing even the strongest dreams. One day, Richard fell seriously ill. His health deteriorated rapidly, forcing him to step back from the business he had poured his heart into. In his vulnerable state, he turned to the one person he trusted most, his younger brother, Thomas. Family is everything, Richard thought. Thomas will keep the company safe. Yet, behind the closed doors of the Carter family, Thomas harbored a secret. While Richard was bedridden, Thomas began siphoning money from the company accounts, forging Richard's signature and making shady deals that no one else knew about. To the outside world, Thomas appeared as the loyal brother stepping up in a time of need. But beneath that facade, he was slowly dismantling everything Richard had built. When Richard finally realized what was happening, it was already too late. The company was drowning in debt, their family home was mortgaged without their knowledge, and the once respected Carter name was being dragged through the mud. The betrayal shattered Richard's spirit. One quiet evening, Richard sat alone in the dimly lit living room, clutching a faded family photo. "How did it come to this?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Sarah tried to comfort him, tears streaming down her face. Emily, now 22, watched helplessly as the man who had taught her the meaning of integrity and love was slowly broken by the treachery of his own blood. Shortly after, Richard passed away, not from his illness, but from a broken heart. At his funeral, the town gathered to pay their respects, but the air was heavy with sorrow and unspoken questions. Thomas was there, but his eyes were cold, distant, a stark contrast to the warmth Richard had always carried. As autumn leaves fell gently, like tears from the sky, Emily stood by her father's grave. Her voice was steady, but filled with pain as she made a vow. "I will make him pay, for you, Dad, I swear." What Emily didn't know then was that her quest for justice would be long and grueling. The police showed little interest, the banks refused to help, and the town that once adored her family turned a blind eye. But Emily's determination only grew stronger. She began to dig deeper, uncovering hidden truths and gathering evidence piece by piece. Along the way, she discovered not only the depths of Thomas's betrayal, but also the strength within herself, a strength born from love, loss, and an unyielding desire to set things right. This journey would cost her dearly. It would test her limits, change her forever, and ultimately define who she was meant to be. After her father's funeral, Emily Carter was no longer the bright, carefree girl that Willow Creek once knew. The laughter that used to light up her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. She moved through the town with a purpose that was unmistakable, her gaze sharp, her spirit hardened by grief and betrayal. The pain had forged her into someone stronger, yet colder, someone who no longer accepted the world as it was. While her mother, Sarah, withdrew into the shadows of mourning, lost in sorrow and silence, Emily's mind was already racing. She wasn't ready to break down. Instead, she was plotting, carefully, methodically, relentlessly. Her first steps were small but deliberate. Night after night, long after the town had gone to sleep, Emily found herself at the public records office. The flickering, fluorescent lights overhead cast long shadows as she pored over stacks of documents tied to Carter and Sons Construction. Every page she turned revealed more cracks in the facade Thomas had built. Contracts had been altered, dates changed, clauses removed, checks were rewritten, amounts siphoned off into accounts no one knew existed. Assets that should have been worth millions were sold for pennies to shell companies registered under names Emily had never heard before. Companies that, she soon discovered, were all linked back to Thomas. She kept a journal, a meticulous ledger of every dirty secret, every forged signature, every suspicious transaction. It was her weapon, her map through the maze of deception. But Emily knew better than to rush to the authorities. Thomas was deeply entrenched in the town's power structure. The mayor owed him favors, the sheriff turned a blind eye, and even the bank managers were on his payroll. If she moved too soon, her efforts would be crushed before they even began. She needed more than just documents. She needed allies. She needed a plan. That's when fate introduced her to Detective Lucas. Lucas was a former city cop who had left the chaos of urban life behind, seeking peace in Willow Creek. Unlike the others, he wasn't tangled in the local politics or debts. When Emily, hands trembling but voice steady, laid out her findings before him, he didn't dismiss her like so many had. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled thoughtfully, and said, "You've got enough to rattle him, but not enough to bury him." Emily nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The documents were a start, but they weren't the smoking gun she needed. To bring Thomas down, she had to strike where it hurt most. His reputation, his standing in the community. And so began Emily's true awakening. No longer just the grieving daughter, she transformed into a hunter, sharp, patient, and relentless. Every memory of her father whispered in her heart, fueling her determination. Richard had taught her how to fight, not with fists, but with grit, intelligence, and unwavering courage. Now, armed with knowledge, allies, and a burning desire for justice, Emily was ready. The game was on. Emily knew Thomas wouldn't fall for a simple ambush. He was too careful, too paranoid. Years of deceit had sharpened his instincts. He expected enemies lurking around every corner, traps hidden in every shadow. If she wanted to bring him down, she had to be smarter. She had to strike at his one true weakness: greed. With Detective Lucas quietly advising her, Emily devised a plan that was as bold as it was risky. They created a new company on paper, a fake investment firm based out of New York, complete with sleek branding, a professional website, and even fake social media buzz. They named it Sterling Ridge Capital, the kind of firm that could offer salvation to someone like Thomas, a man desperate to launder dirty money and hide his tracks. Next, Emily crafted the perfect bait, an email offering Thomas an exclusive investment opportunity in a booming real estate project. A chance to triple his hidden funds in just 6 months. The offer was irresistible, too good to ignore. Within 2 days, Thomas took the bait. He scheduled a private meeting with the supposed representatives of Sterling Ridge, unaware that every phone call, every email, every signature was being carefully recorded by Emily and Detective Lucas. Emily's heart pounded as she watched Thomas swagger into the fake office they had rented for the meeting. The same smug grin was there, the same casual cruelty she remembered from her childhood, when he would belittle her father in subtle jabs that only Richard seemed to notice. But today, the tables had turned. Thomas spoke freely, boasting about his offshore accounts, his fake transactions, and the intricate web of lies he had spun to cover his tracks. He believed he was finally escaping the tangled mess he'd created in Willow Creek. Every word he uttered tightened the noose around his own neck. By the end of the meeting, Emily had everything she needed: undeniable proof of embezzlement, clear evidence of money laundering, and the truth that Thomas Carter was no innocent victim of business collapse, but the mastermind behind the Carter family's ruin. As Thomas shook hands and walked out whistling, Emily sat trembling behind the mirrored glass, clutching the folder that held years of pain, anger, and quiet suffering, all condensed into damning evidence. And yet, as she stared at his retreating figure, a knot of uncertainty twisted in her stomach. Would justice taste as sweet as she had always imagined? The real battle was about to begin. With the evidence locked and loaded, Emily knew the moment had come to go public, but she was far from naive. Thomas still had powerful friends in high places. If she simply handed over the files to the authorities, there was a very real chance they would lose them. Or worse, Thomas would slip away once again, untouchable. She needed the court of public opinion on her side first. So, Emily moved carefully, like a chess player plotting her next move. She began leaking the story, piece by piece. Anonymous emails were sent to local journalists, each containing snippets of the truth, enough to spark curiosity, but not enough to be dismissed outright. Mysterious packages arrived at the newspaper's doorstep, filled with documents and photographs that painted a damning picture. Whispers spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Fraud, betrayal, greed. Within days, Thomas Carter's carefully constructed world began to unravel. The town that once applauded him now turned its back. Old friends crossed the street to avoid his gaze. Local banks froze his accounts, citing pending investigations. Even his closest allies, the sheriff, the mayor, began to distance themselves, issuing public statements filled with shock and disappointment. The pressure mounted until the police had no choice but to act. At dawn, Detective Lucas led a raid on Thomas's lavish estate. Cameras rolled, reporters shouted questions, and the town watched as the man who had once ruled Willow Creek was dragged out in handcuffs. His face twisted in disbelief and rage, a man stripped of his power and dignity. For Emily, watching the footage on TV was surreal. She should have felt victorious, like a warrior returning home after a long, bloody battle. But instead, she felt hollow. Beside her, Sarah sat silently, eyes fixed on the screen. There was no joy in her expression, only a deep, aching sorrow. "I just wanted us to be left in peace," Sarah whispered, her voice fragile. And in that moment, Emily understood. Winning had come at a cost. The loss of innocence, the shattering of peace, and perhaps even a piece of her soul. Because revenge, even when justified, never comes without a price. The town buzzed for weeks after Thomas Carter's arrest. News outlets from neighboring cities descended on Willow Creek like vultures, eager to feast on the scandal that had shattered the community's peace. Everyone suddenly had an opinion. Everyone pretended they had always suspected Thomas was a fraud, the whispers of betrayal now loud and clear in every corner of the town. But none of it brought Emily peace. Her days became a blur of endless tasks, cleaning up what was left of the Carter family name, settling debts that seemed to multiply overnight, selling off the few remaining assets, and attending one lawyer meeting after another. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like never before. The house she had grown up in, the place filled with memories of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and quiet family dinners, was sold to cover mounting legal fees. Each item she packed away felt like burying her father all over again, a painful reminder of everything lost. And the worst part, even after all she had sacrificed, there were still those who whispered behind her back, that she had destroyed her own family for money, that she had been too ruthless, that maybe, just maybe, she had become just like Thomas. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. One rainy afternoon, standing on the porch of their nearly empty home, Emily clutched an old photo of her father, smiling, proud, with sawdust still clinging to his jacket. The rain blurred her vision, mixing with the tears she tried to hold back. "I did it for you," she whispered to the photo. "But did I do it right?" Just then, Detective Lucas arrived for one last visit before leaving town. He found Emily sitting on the steps, lost in thought, the weight of everything she had endured etched on her face. "You kept your promise," he said simply, sitting beside her. "Not many people can say that." Emily nodded, but her heart felt heavier than ever. Before he left, Lucas handed her a small box. Inside lay a silver compass, the very one her father had carried when he first started the company, a symbol of guidance and hope. "Whenever you're lost," Lucas said softly, "let this remind you. You find your way not by looking back, but by moving forward." The storm passed, but Emily knew, deep down, her true journey was only just beginning. Months passed. Willow Creek slowly forgot the scandal, as small towns always do. New gossip replaced old wounds, and life moved forward as if the storm had never touched the quiet streets and familiar faces. The headlines faded, the cameras left, and the town returned to its gentle rhythm. But for Emily Carter, the scars remained. Quiet reminders of a battle hard fought and dearly paid. They lingered in her heart, in the lines of her face, and in the weight of every decision she had made. She could have left. She could have disappeared into a bigger city where no one knew her name, where she could start fresh, free from the shadows of her family's past. But she didn't. Instead, Emily stayed. Not to rebuild Carter & Sons construction, that chapter was closed forever, but to build something entirely new, something that would give back to the community that had once embraced her family and now needed healing. She envisioned a place where young people could learn skills, find mentorship, and grow beyond the narrow streets and limited opportunities Willow Creek had always offered. A place where hope could take root and flourish. She named it the Richard Carter Foundation. Brick by brick, she poured her heart into the project, restoring her family's honor not through revenge, but through hope. Every nail hammered, every wall painted, was a step toward healing. For herself, for her mother, and for the town. On opening day, the sun shone brightly over the courtyard as townspeople gathered, their voices hushed with a mix of curiosity and regret. Whispers of apology floated through the air, apologies they would never have the courage to say out loud. But it didn't matter. Emily wasn't doing this for their approval. She was doing it for the little girl she used to be, the one who believed in doing what was right, even when it hurt, the one who had loved her father more than anything in the world. As she cut the ribbon with trembling hands, Sarah stood proudly at her side, tears shining in her eyes. The weight of the past seemed to lift, if only for a moment, replaced by a fragile but fierce hope. And in that moment, under the wide open sky, Emily realized something profound. She hadn't lost herself after all. She had fought her way back to who she was always meant to be. Not the girl shattered by betrayal, but the woman who built something stronger from the ruins. Justice had been served. The past was at peace, and the future was hers.